Hey everyone, Angelo here, Hollywood filmmaker, greatest screenwriter in the history of the world, recovering hobo. And this 38-year-old virgin, Yin, has finally gotten laid. Off. It was on my 4th anniversary of being in LA, May 3rd, 2023, that's the year, that I got the call after I left work that I'm being laid off. They said it was corporate restructuring and whatever, all that. So that's the short of it. I'm looking for work. Been looking, been out networking, had a wonderful time with this bike and mobility event, Streets for All, yesterday. Look at some of my YouTube shorts. The shorts don't normally get pushed out to subscribers. They go to a different audience. So I'm encouraging any subscribers to actually go there and look at my shorts for clips from this event where we did a bike ride around Culver City. It was so beautiful, and it was just such a joy to be around other cyclists and skateboarders, and there was a guy on a unicycle and people on rollerblades. I got to ride a skateboard, or longboards, I guess they're called. Those longboards, or whatever you call them, were so beautiful, so awesome. I was picking it up so quickly. I'm like, I have to get a skateboard at some point. When I get another job, that is. Because I'm like, oh my goodness, now I feel jealous of I don't ever want to leave one out of my life, skateboarding and biking. But that was such a joy, such a wonderful event. But now I'm dealing with the fallout from all of this. So aside from we're being evicted, which kind of is a good thing for now because it's putting a pause on the rent while the guy I rent from, Frankie, fights the eviction, and the lease is in his name. So the building, supposedly they're going to try and sign the lease over to the rest of us. So I'll see what the terms are too. I'm sure they're going to jack the rent way up. But needless to say, well, there's a lot I haven't said, actually. So getting laid off, I knew it was going to happen. I knew they were planning it. It was an absolutely hellish, traumatizing experience being at this job. I am traumatized every day. I have, I can't sleep well a lot of nights. This is the job where I was sexually harassed for 6 months. The guy who did it was not just a creep, deprived, and wanted to satisfy his urges with someone. But he was a manipulator. He was a predator. He isolated me. He played mind games with me. Not only he didn't care if I was uncomfortable, that seemed to be the source of his thrill, was to make me uncomfortable and give me sleazy pickup lines, thinly veiled as oh, I'm just interested in working, like what you like, Angelo. But they're utter nonsense. It's just the kind of stuff you would try and say to someone to pick them up in a club, or something you'd say to your partner already if you're already in sort of, you're flirtatious and you joke with each other to try and... Anyways, what you're saying is you like each other with it. It's not really a conversation of this specific thing or that. It was so horrifying and disturbing. He kept doing it for months. And here's one thing I know. Never report to HR if you can help it. So I didn't. I had tried reporting stuff to HR before. They were absolutely incompetent about it. The guy didn't even, be honest with me at HR. Sent the boss when I said, I want to have my complaint in writing. Anyways, it was a whole thing. He was like, is there a reason you don't trust me to give an accurate summary of our conversation? He isn't aware that people have mistakes in their cognition and flaws, and that I wouldn't be prone to feeling pressured to downplay my allegations. This was about something else even earlier. It was a much more minor thing. Still disturbing, but manager came by. Basically, he kept pressuring me to lie. Say, what, you got a problem with the HR guy or something? I'm like, this guy doesn't even understand what's going on. So I was like, no, I have to keep it in writing, which of course that's not playing along with the rules, which is you downplay the complaint to let HR say, hey, we didn't find any violation of policy, that's that. The manager also told me, don't go to HR. They don't know what's going on. Come to me. And that manager left the company too. But all that meant is I wouldn't want to go to HR because I see they don't know what they're doing, and I wouldn't want to go to the manager either. Short of it is because it's just so disturbing. Like, I couldn't sleep this morning, and it's still like 7 or 8 months or so after I even reported it, and it went on for 6 months before that. Basically, I told my manager that this is a different manager, that this guy, I didn't explicitly say sexual harassment because I was really scared. Like, I don't want to assert anything like without ironclad proof, because what proof is there? It's just my word, what I witnessed. That I explained what he did. He was asking me really bizarre, nonsensical questions and clearly getting a sexual thrill from it, and looking at me like he just couldn't wait to devour me. And I said, this guy's looking at me with way too much admiration and stuff. My manager is just like Beavis and Butthead. Like you see the picture, Beavis and Butthead laughing. She was like, she laughed, literally, at something I said. I'm not getting too specific, so you're saying, well, is that fair to say or whatever? I could get super specific about it. I had to write all this down. I had to report all of it eventually, but she basically brushed it off. She said, oh, I talked to him. That's it. And it continued another 4 months. At the same time, I reported to my manager that a coworker was bullying me, was being, for lack of a better word, hostile, was snapping at me, like just walking into the room and saying hi to me. And my manager kept downplaying it, saying, well, you know, are you sure you didn't understand that your coworker is just different? And maybe it's something we all have to get used to. I'm like, I really wanted to tell, but you can't do this. You got to play the game. If you tell them, hey, I catch you lying, or I've caught you not being totally forthcoming with me, then you're already on the outs. So I said, no, that's not what happened. Like, this person was definitely snapping at me, being rude, stepped in my way, wagged their finger at me, all this stuff. Anyway, so my manager was really disrespectful about it. Short of it is, downplayed it all. The coworker apologized and was totally cool to me after that. So they got it out of them. Whatever it was, they were nothing but respectful after that. Props to them. And this isn't directed at them. But the manager basically, without getting too specific, like after the talk, the manager brought me and the coworker together to talk. The manager just snapped at me and threatened me and said, you should watch out, and said more after that and berated me. And it was so disturbing and traumatizing. And I had come to my manager with these reports of misconduct. And of course, after that, my manager love bombed me and was like, I care about you, Angelo, you know, and you're a great worker and all that. And yeah, so the sexual harassment continued another 4 months. It was increasingly like intolerable. It was like just running poison into me. This guy seemed to like believe it was his claim to possess me. And I reported it to 2 more managers who, I don't know what really happened. They said, what came out was basically, they talked to him. They can't say explicitly. I didn't even say explicitly the word sexual harassment. I told one manager who I trusted more, he's being a creep with me, a pest. He wants me to be available for him. I'm not. And the other one just played it off like, well, I'm sure he's just being funny. And he doesn't mean anything by it. Well, the last straw came when the sexual harasser was just being a total creep. He brought a piece of equipment to my office to do something with, and instead of just setting it down and walking away, I was eating, and he just kept shuffling it in like an inch at a time. Like just trying to take my time. He seemed fascinated by me when I was eating. And I was like so disgusted. I'm like, okay, this guy's not stopping. Threw my food in the trash, literally just threw it down, got up, picked it, talked for a minute what I need to do with the equipment, whatever. And then in the middle of the conversation, while I'm leaning over, and I'm not looking at him directly in the eye, I'm looking just off because I don't want this creep thinking I'm at all interested in him, but it didn't matter. Like, he enjoyed that. I leaned over, I just see him like just like staring at my body, and I felt so like exposed. I felt like he was x-raying me down to my skeleton. Like I could feel him dissecting me. It was so disturbing. I was trying to work out policies with the managers to say, hey, can we just set up a policy for him so he understands? Stop taking so much of my time. And this was after the manager said, we talked to him. He said he was sorry to respect your privacy, but they were real vague about it. Supposedly they just said like, you know, work's not a social club, and, you know, Angelo's uncomfortable, and that's it. But I think he enjoyed that. He's like, yeah, oh, Angelo's uncomfortable. And that's when he just, like, stopped being this goofy little game of smiling at me and leering at me. He would just stop and leer at me. He literally, and he would follow me in the halls. It was so uncomfortable. I wanted to scream. One time he just came up to my window and said, hey, Angelo. I turned around and said, yes. And he just, like, just so traumatizing. I know you might look at that and think, well, what's the big deal? Like, it's different when I'm just reenacting it and I'm not actually feeling those things that he felt and thinking those thoughts that he was. Finally, the manager who threatened me, I emailed that person and I said, look, we got to work something out. I told them this is depressing and disturbing. He's been doing this for months. Like, he was staring at my body. I can only describe him as lecherous. My manager then went to HR. I'm like, great. Now this is the harbinger of my doom, basically. And it was. So I won't go into all the details after that because this is another several months. But I realized, like, after the hell of reporting to HR, and of course they found him not in violation of policy, and he denied it all and said he'd never do that because he's got a woman and kid at home. And I just said to the manager, like, big deal. He has a double life, like, big deal. Like, I knew he had a girlfriend. I didn't know about the kid, or I knew at one point he had a girlfriend. In my mind, I naively projected some decency onto him and thought, oh, well, his girlfriend must have an understanding with him. Like, hey, he's a swinger or something. I didn't even think to go to the conclusion that, oh, he's just betraying his girlfriend. And it's been a horrifying nightmare that's affected every area of my life. And like, I've called, you know, hotlines for help. I've been to therapy, started with another therapist, and now that I've lost my job, my health insurance is going to run out, so I'm not going to be able to get that therapist for more than an appointment or two. And it's like, yeah, what do I do? Like, these guys are just hiding in plain sight. And I'm like, this guy had practice. I'm sure he's done this before. He started a month into his job with me, sexually harassing me. So I'm like, this was clearly an agenda for him. It was something on his mind that this is one of his prime directives, is his sexual conquest and humiliation of others. And I don't even like getting into it more. What's the point? It's just more ugly details, like just saddling, you know, the environment around me with more of this ugliness. And, you know, from there I could tell I was on the outs. And sure enough, I was. Took a few months because that's the standard protocol for HRs across the country. They didn't renew my certain certifications I needed several months ago. And that's when I was like, oh, they're planning on getting rid of me because the certifications expire in a year. I believe mine expire in June that I need for my job. And normally, we just all take them together, me and my coworkers, because we have one guy who trains us all for it. It's this official thing. And everyone else got trained except me. And sure enough, and I emailed my manager. I said, hey, shouldn't I be doing this with everyone else? And my manager, the one who threatened me, they were no longer my manager by that point. They had to step aside after I reported that to HR. HR admitted to me something, the person I spoke to at HR, that I don't think they were supposed to admit, which they were pretty stunned. And they were like, I can see why you didn't want to report this. But really what they were thinking, I'm sure, was, oh shit, what was this manager doing? Because for one thing, HR has to have a good relationship with the managers. They're not there to protect you. I already knew that. Like, I knew I never wanted to talk to HR. But, and so in a way, it's like, I can't take it personally. Like, not just in a way, it's like, this is how it is around the country. If it wasn't me, it could have been 100 different people. They would have treated anyone in my position the same way. But still, like, I have no sympathy in that. Like, you're the ones perpetrating this on people and harboring predators. But the HR person, I'm sure, was thinking like, oh shit, this manager may have, or at least it can be perceived, it could be conceivably perceived as this manager threatened Angelo and pressured him not to report about sexual harassment. And so they weren't found in violation of policy, which, of course, it's not even a surprise. Like, I wasn't even disappointed. But they were asked to step aside as my manager, so I'd be more comfortable with someone. Of course, I wasn't comfortable reporting anything to the other person. There were more issues. So it's like, why go into the dark depths of all this? Just keep it broad, to sort of keep it as simple as possible, and tell you, 1, unionize. 2, start worker co-ops. 3, speak up. Speak up for your coworkers, fight for your rights, and fight for a more equitable world where your housing, your medical care, your life is not tied to this exchange where you're exploited by an employer for work. And you're told, oh, this is great, this is the, you know, a great place to work, you know, all this stuff. And I knew it was a problem really since the day I was promoted, pretty early into my employment, because the way my manager was talking to me, it was like I could do no wrong, and I was like, my manager was wrapped around my finger, and I was like, oh, okay, that's codependency. And I can see how that plays out in reverse, which is, yeah, right now I can do no wrong, but if I'm ever wrong in my manager's eyes, then I'm all wrong. And that played out exactly how I knew it would, like a year later, or not even a year later. So, you know, it's not, I'm not talking to complain about my situation or anything. I'm fine. I have savings. I'm going to get another job. I'll get gigs. I go to these free events now where I'm networking. I'm meeting such great people. Like, it's so awesome. Seeing different parts of LA. It's just blowing my mind being out here. This little, to me, still 38-year-old, but like little Virginia boy. Oh, also, I had to hear a lot of anti-homeless rhetoric and fair amount of racism at the job. I had a coworker who just you just let him talk. You don't let him, you just are in proximity, and he would just rant about how he doesn't want to give money to homeless people because he doesn't want to support criminals, or I don't want to support criminals. And then he did, to be in fairness, say, I'm not saying they're all criminals. And said things like, you know, homeless people squat and build. He basically, you could just tell he takes a steady media diet of right-wing news. Because he complained about woke people being the worst problem in the world, complained about defund the police, activists, complained a lot about homeless people, the ones on Hollywood Boulevard. And I even told him, I said, you know, like, I can understand why they stay out there, because when I was sleeping in my car, it was really dangerous on side streets. So, and I was in dangerous situations. So after I did that, I realized I'm never doing that again. I'll only stay in like areas where I'm safer, like parking lots. But in this case, people in tents, it makes sense not to be on the side streets. So I said, good for them. And he's like, well, it's good for them, but it's bad for everyone else. I'm like, that is so foul. He didn't even understand what I'm saying, and he didn't understand what he was saying. He's talking about homeless people like they're a bug infestation. I know a lot of people think that way, which is, you know, the water he swims in. He said other things about homeless people too. They're really uncomfortable. I kept telling him, you know, I lived on the street. I could talk about that. I don't need to hear about that. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, everyone's just a rent payment away from going homeless. I'm like, but you're talking about these people you never met, and like they're victimizing you. He said, Hispanic people get away with a lot of hit and runs. And I'm sorry, but this is racist, what he said. Hit and runs because they don't have driver's licenses, so the police don't do anything to them. And then one time he was talking about his experience being in jail, and then he just straight up said, he was like he was hypnotized. He said, you know, Hispanic people get away with a lot of crime. It's really bad. I was just like, what did I just hear? And I know for some people watching, you're going to be like, yeah, so what? That's true. Hey, you know your people. If that's what you think, then that's your person. That's not my person. That's not how I work. I don't want to say anyone's just not my person. People are redeemable, whatever, you know. And it's guys that like, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I know this is a common sentiment, unfortunately. A lot of people buy into this. So what am I going to do about it? And the final thing I'll say is that same person was very irate with me because I told him finally I didn't appreciate him talking about people like that. I didn't appreciate him stigmatizing mental illness. He called someone crazy. And then he was very irate with me and said, I can't deal with your sensitivities, Angelo. I don't know what triggers you. And I said, you said homeless people get away with a lot of crime. It's really bad. He was like, when? And I said, I don't know. Now, the truth is, I know it was before I reported the sexual harassment because I considered reporting it then. But I'm like, don't bother. You're just going to seem like you have more complaints. And HR is not prepared to deal with this. Like, they're not there. You know, the people there around you, and it's bigger than just work. This is what many people think because it's such a popularly held ignorant notion that's perpetuated by racist imagery in media. So anyways, he got very irate and he's like, I don't know what you've been saying to HR about me because they told me when we hired the new guy not to talk to you. I'm like, I didn't know that. I didn't say anything to you, HR. He's like, well, you must have said something. Now, when they hired the new guy, shortly after that is when they did this recertifications and didn't include me. And so I'm listening to this and I'm like, I don't know about this. I said, I believe that they told you this, but I don't know. He's like, well, you must have said something. Finally, I said, it's because I was sexually harassed for 6 months. I can't talk about it. And I walked out. And a week later, I was let go. So that's corporate America in a nutshell. That's Hollywood in a nutshell. In many ways, there are lots of decent people, a lot of great people, including people I met yesterday who work in media, who just seem like wonderful people, genuine. But the reality is, money itself is, someone said this, I don't remember who, money is conservative. Meaning, not just politically conservative, it's like money imbues a fear of change, a fear of altering anything. Money is so much. And so it's like, well, what do? I just commit myself to post-traumatic growth. I try and empower. It's not really empowering to me in a way to talk about this stuff. I don't like getting into these details. These are so awful. When I talk about this stuff, I literally have nightmares about it. And I'm like, I never believed my life would be like this, where a sexual predator is manipulating me. And one thing I'm sure is, I'm like, okay, he started doing this a month into his job. He risked the woman he has and the child at home. He risked his career for it. I'm like, oh, so he's very bold. He's very, like, this is a strong urge for him. He's had practice and he's done this before. And whatever he's trying to control in himself, whatever trauma he's trying to gain mastery over, he's going to exert this influence to sort of invigorate that sense of control again. And I could see how intoxicated he seemed, not by me, but by his perception of his own attractiveness. Like, he was fantasizing, the wheels were turning of how much he loved the idea of dominating me and what a thrill it would be for him. Nothing to do with respecting my humanity, nothing mutually respectful about it. From the moment I met him, he was too much. Hi, how are you? Like, it was so uncomfortable. Like, why can't this guy just treat me like a human being? I went up to myself to introduce myself to him. I went up to him to introduce myself to him shortly after he started there, and he was already weirding me out. And, you know, it's just, what's the point of explaining the details? Like, you either believe it or you don't. No amount of details would make a difference for that, because some people just don't believe anything they hear along those lines. And anyways, so what's the point? And I'm pretty sure the HR person believed me, but I could see they were very concerned. One, they knew I had to be fired when I was reporting this because I was going to be a problem and I'm too much of a truth teller. And I'm not saying that because that means a noble thing about me necessarily. In the work context, it's a foolish thing, but it's just who I am in that situation. I'm like, I have more than just a responsibility to speak up for myself, but a responsibility to speak up in that whatever I say, I'm attesting to everyone else as to who I am. And if I hide this report about him, then I'm saying, oh, I don't really take this seriously. Hey, you all know, just so you know, I'm going to accept money to be quiet about a sexual predator. Just so you know, I'm going to raise my hand and say that. And so that's what it was. I could see the fear in her realizing, as she told me, nothing's going to happen to you, Angelo, that she knew exactly what had to happen. And so it was a given. So the plan was put in motion. So, you know, credit where credit is due. They did draw it out to make it look like, oh, it's just a corporate restructuring. I did, you know, get several more months there. Anyway, so now I'm making the most of my time, getting up super early. I can't sleep well. And do my writing, apply for jobs, and network, going to these free events. Maybe I'll get some work doing something with bikes or multimodal transit or active transit. I would love that in many ways while I work on my writing career, because I do want to launch that. So, you know, no point in like dwelling too much on the negative stuff, especially when like what results would I get for it? It just makes me absolutely miserable and traumatized. I've been homeless. I've been sick for much of my adult life in a dissociated state. This was perhaps the most poisonous thing I've ever dealt with. I just could not believe like what an upside down world I'm in, where I'm like, this guy doesn't give a shit about my well-being. And what I heard of what he said in response to my allegations, I'm like, that's basically an admission of guilt, the way he denied it. And he had ostensibly, I guess, no explanation for a lot of his dopey or dumb questions to me. And the explanations just crumble. Like they're like, oh, I needed to ask about this, or I was, you know, just needed to find out about this. I was concerned about this. And like, doesn't make sense. And the idea that he wouldn't do it because he has a woman and a kid, I'm like, what does that mean? You wouldn't sexually harass someone because you have a woman and kid? So there you go. Some people live their double lives, but this can either, you know, break a person or can make them strive for post-traumatic growth. And I'm determined to try and make that happen. So, you know, people, strengthen like your bonds with each other, you know, link together, speak up. That's the only way this happens, because each individual case, it can be totally rationalized away. The idea that any wrongdoing was done on any level, any injustice was done. So you have to link together to create a bigger picture of how you're going to, you know, oppose this inertia where bad behavior basically goes unpunished, and in fact it goes rewarded. As I saw with my sexual harasser, he was rewarded at his job. And it's so, I totally see why people would not want to report, would be totally fearful of talking, because all it does is make you look like a problematic person and a troublemaker. That's all it does. Like, it doesn't help you. Okay, I will say this. They did tell the guy, don't talk to me, stay away from me, and he did, except he was hovering around me. I could see him texting on his phone, you know, by my office. I'm like, he doesn't need to stand there and text. He doesn't need to stand outside my office and stand joking with someone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Like, he knows he can do that somewhere else. So, you know, that's a common thing HR will do in sexual harassment cases. They'll say, we found no evidence of wrongdoing. This person wasn't in violation of policy, but we want to make sure you're comfortable. So we'll separate you two. And that's it. That's a comment. That's not even this. I knew to expect that. Like, that wasn't even a disappointment. I'm like, I already know. That's why I didn't want to report it. I'm like, because I even said in my report, like, I can see why you would just think, oh, this is just Angela's misunderstanding. This is all, you know, Angela doesn't understand being sociable or something. And I'm like, he played it off with subterfuge. He gave everything a thin veil of plausible deniability. And I'm like, yeah, he's very good at that. And that's what's so scary and troublesome. In addition to just the pain and anger I could see in him, just this lust for domineering over someone. And the fact that my humanity was reduced to nothing with him. And all through the simplest little mind games and tricks and isolating me. And oh, he'd only ever do it to me in private. He wouldn't act that way in front of other people. And it's so painful to talk about. I literally like have nightmares after I talk about it. And it's like a tide that just creeps in. You don't like see the tide as you're sitting there, moves too slowly. It just creeps in over a couple of hours and days, and it'll go back out, and I'll feel out okay for a few hours, or a day or so, but I don't know. I don't know what to do other than stay committed to my program, to my plan, my routine. And by that, I just mean getting up early, keeping my diet right, working hard, working out, writing, keeping my social bonds, keep staying connected to you all out there. And trust me, if you've been through this, like, I hate thinking people have been through this, but you know, you're not alone, unfortunately. Like, it's very, very common. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, the fact I never imagined when I came to LA I would go through this. The layoff and stuff, I don't care. It's a big deal. The sexual harassment, the manipulation from this creep, this lecherous pig, who's got this psychosexual compulsion. It's just so disturbing. And I don't like talking about it like that, because then it's like it gives it more power. But trust me, I know these people are out there. And what can we do except be well to ourselves? And the reality is, I knew this job was trouble from when I did my second interview to get it. Because the manager, the one who kept pressuring me to lie and say, hey, what's your problem with the HR guy? You know he's just trying to help you, right? And I said, no, I just want to keep it in writing so it's all there if I need it. And he said, oh, well, but you're talking to me. I wanted to say in that moment, yeah, because you're bullying me. But think about it. You're calling someone out for something. They're not going to like that. And he didn't even have the cognizance to understand that. He just believed, I'm sure he would have been like, wow, bullying. I knew it was a problem from the time he interviewed me, because this guy, I'm not sure he asked me any questions. He did, I'm sure. He must have asked me at least one or two. But he basically talked for 30 minutes. So I know, okay, if he's talking, I need a job. I'm just going to listen. And I realized, oh, he doesn't know how to hire people. And so he promoted the manager who threatened me and later had to step down. He hired the racist guy who said Hispanic people get away with a lot of crime. It's really bad. He promoted, again, the manager who hired someone else who I won't go into who they are, because it's really, it wasn't their fault, but they should have never been brought on because they were totally unprepared for the job, totally immature, and they just didn't have the skills or resources. I'm like, I wanted to take my manager's side and be like the way you'd think a manager would to someone who's drunk at work, be like, hey, like, is your judgment okay? Like, before I even criticize what you did, like, I have to make sure, are you cognizant of what's going on here? Because it showed absolutely no judgment in their hiring. And I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty common theme there. So, like, I can't even, like, necessarily assign blame for that, because I'm like, you get to be who you are. Like, if you're just bad at hiring, that's not a violation of a policy or anything. It does cause these slow-moving disasters, which lead to huge disasters like the one I'm dealing with. Not to overstate it, but, you know, it's very painful. And I'm committed to being well. I'm committed to being connected to you all out there and empowering people, and not saying, oh, okay, I was crushed, I was defeated. There was no defeat. It was just someone did something, as a few people did stuff, but one person in particular did a series of very bad things to me. And now I'm determined to go on, to be well. And I'm like, there was nothing good about being sexually harassed. The only good thing to be found is in the post-traumatic growth and in how I respond to the world around me now, and view the chance to be better and to grow after this trauma as a blessing. So let me know what you think. Click like on the video, subscribe. Helps to say something light. And you know, I can't tell you how painful it is to talk about this, because it's going to haunt me the rest of the day. But what can I do? Like, I realize it's wrong if I hide it. It's wrong. I'm lying to you. I'm telling you I'm someone I'm not. And, you know, a person like that maybe just can't function in corporate America. I don't know. I'm sure some places you could. Some places that, yeah, will be a lot of places. Let's not just say some. It will be a problem. And that's aside from, you know, just I'm not a good fit for everywhere. That's a given for anybody, and it's a given for me. But I have to speak my truth as best as I can. I mean, what can I say? It's not inherently like, oh, I'm being honorable. It's just like, who am I? If I don't say what I go through, I don't have to go through every detail, but that's ostensibly what I do on YouTube. And then I'm going to lie and say, like, oh, just here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm working on, that's it, doing simple stuff. No, I have to be real on some level. And I believe it's empowering for some of you out there, and hope it is. And just want people to be well and want to prevent stuff like this from happening. And if it tells you, hey, maybe, you know, the choice of job you have can have a big impact on your life, know what you're choosing. And now I don't blame myself for choosing this job, because I needed it in a way, and I was homeless at the time and at an even worse job where I'd been working for 5 months. But that's also why, you know, we have to make sure people aren't reliant on jobs to live. So there's a broader issue there that you can't address by just saying, well, get a good job, or like, well, you got to get a job. Well, yeah, well, there's a bigger issue of how is it just for someone to have to take a job, where that's where predators will lie, is in knowing your vulnerabilities. You need something from them, and they can exploit you for that in a number of ways. So let's be well. Let's strengthen our bonds, everyone. Oh yeah, I got my MF Doom shirt on. What up? Check it out. So I'm going to get to work writing and applying for jobs and all that. Do a little exercise. Had a beautiful time riding my bike yesterday. I can't wait to do more of it. Can't wait to get skateboarding. Oh man, I'm so excited for that. I loved it. And be well, everyone. Let me know what you think. And also get on a bike, get on a skateboard, be safe, and learn about active mobility in your community as well, and try and promote it and find bonds with people who share that interest and that, passion. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.